NFL free agency has answered a lot of the quarterback questions we had this offseason. However, there are 6 teams that still need to figure out their long-term plan at quarterback. So today, let's list off those teams. So like I said, there are 6 teams who thus far have not answered their questions at the quarterback position. Some of the teams are obvious, some of these teams are a little bit less prominent. And as a bit of a bonus at the end of the video, I will be grading some of the recent quarterback moves, such as Russell Wilson and Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh and Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. We'll go to all those at the very end of the video. For now, let's get into the list. And we are going to begin with the Chicago Bears. Now, as we all know, Justin Fields was supposed to be the long-term answer at the quarterback position. However, he was just traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, we'll talk about that at the very end of the video. For what the Chicago Bears can do, they have the #1 overall pick. So unless they are for some reason going to trade down to pick 2 or 3, they're going to have their own pick of the crop, and more than likely the pick will be Caleb Williams. If you're asking me, I have no problem with them trading away Justin Fields for Caleb Williams. I truly do believe that Justin Fields is a good quarterback in the NFL. I just think that Caleb Williams' upside is 10 times higher than Justin Fields. You can disagree with me all you want. At the end of the day, I think the Chicago Bears have a similar line of thought as I do, as they just traded away Justin Fields and are going probably with Caleb Williams #1 overall. For Chicago, you already have a decent offensive line, a good running back, really talented wide receivers with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet. And defensively, you're going to get better. They also have a second top 10 pick in which they're probably going to take another defensive player to help add even more pieces to this defense. So for the Chicago Bears, you're setting Caleb Williams up nicely, and I kind of do feel bad for Justin Fields. Next up, we have the Washington Commanders. Again, the second overall pick of the draft. They will also have the pick of the crop of either Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jayden Daniels, depending on which one of those 3 is taken #1 and which one they prefer. If based off everything I am hearing is true, Caleb Williams will go #1, and right now it sounds like the Commanders are favoring Jayden Daniels. I personally prefer Drake May, and I think a lot of other people do as well. But regardless of who they pick up, they're going to be going into a relatively decent situation down there in Washington. They just picked up a new center in Tyler Biadasz. They also have some pretty good receiver weapons like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. They already have Brian Robinson, and now they also have Austin Eckler. Sure, Eckler isn't the same guy that he used to be, and he's not that explosive running back that maybe we think he is. However, he's still a good receiving back, and I think for the price, it was actually pretty worth it. Washington also will be bringing in Dan Quinn as their new defensive coordinator / head coach, but he's going to be the defensive coordinator, and I actually like a lot of the moves he made on the defense. Dorrance Armstrong, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner all sound like very good moves on a defense that really needs talent. Not to mention, you already have Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, so your defensive line should be pretty good, and I'm honestly excited to see what they do next year in an NFC East that's up and down. It's kind of a weird division. Again, I think that Jayden Daniels will be the pick here. I would prefer Drake May. Whoever it is, though, they're going into a pretty solid situation down there in Washington. At #3, we have the New England Patriots. Now, the New England Patriots are one of the weirder teams of this list because there is a very good chance they don't actually take a quarterback in this year's draft. And the reason why I say that is it seems like they are very favorable to trade down, especially with some of these other teams that are on this list who might be looking to trade up at #3. The Patriots have a lot of question marks on their roster. They really did not have, in my opinion, as impressive of a free agency as maybe some people would want them to have. Yes, they were able to re-sign guys like Josh Uche and Mike Onwenu, which I think were good deals, but they didn't really go out there and seriously fix up their offensive line or fix up their receiving room. It's still just as bad as last year. And yes, as I'm making the video, they did bring in KJ Osborne, who I believe should be the #2 wide receiver on this team, which good for him. I think it's a good deal, and I think it's a good spot for him. However, with all the problems this New England Patriots team has, I wouldn't be shocked if they decided to trade down to get even more draft capital to capitalize on their current position. Yes, it would suck to potentially lose out on a Drake May or a Jayden Daniels or potentially a Caleb Williams, but it is also understandable because this is a team that has a lot of question marks on this roster. Let me ask you guys this. If you're a Patriots fan, obviously you would prefer to get the quarterback, but if you could hypothetically trade down, let's say to pick 11 or so, you get even more first-round picks this year and next year, and then long-term you're set up even nicer, and who knows, maybe you could still end up with a quarterback this year like a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, depending on who's going to be available. If it was me, I would personally take the quarterback at their current spot. However, if there's a very good offer, such as the next team we're going to talk about, which, spoiler alert, it's the Minnesota Vikings, who have 2 first-round picks. If you could hypothetically take the Minnesota Vikings 2 first-round picks, and who knows, maybe even a first-round pick next year, that would mean you have 3 first-round picks within the next 2 years, and you could take a Bo Nix with your pick 11, not to mention you can pick up a Brian Thomas with your 23rd pick, and next year you can go out there and take the best wide receiver, or even if you you don't get a quarterback this year, you could take the best quarterback with your 2 first-round picks next year. Again, I am personally all in favor of the Patriots taking a quarterback at number 3. However, I do think Patriots fans should be open to the idea of trading down, because at the bare minimum, you do have Jacoby Brissett, who could be a stopgap quarterback for this team. But now we get to the 3 wildcard teams. These are teams who I could easily see going into next year with their current quarterbacks, but I could also see a world where they potentially get super aggressive in the draft to seriously fix up the quarterback room. And we are going to begin with the Minnesota Vikings, who, as I mentioned, do have 2 first-round picks this year, as they just traded for their 2nd first-round pick. A lot of people, including myself, believe this is a potential move to help them move up in the draft to get a top-tier quarterback this year. Yes, they just picked up Sam Darnold, but it's only a 1-year deal, and more than likely, it's just going to be as a mentor-like role. And let's say they do go out there and get a Drake May who's relatively younger. Sam Darnold could be the starter on the team week 1, and then as things go along, maybe by week 4, Drake May gets to start over a guy like Sam Darnold. To me, Minnesota drafting a quarterback makes a ton of sense. They're a relatively young roster as a whole. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jonathan Grenard, a lot of the guys they picked up are relatively young. However, they also have guys who are in the mood to win now, like an Aaron Jones and, a Justin Jefferson. They have the pieces to win, they just really need the quarterback. Kirk Cousins was great for them, and by the way, like I said, we'll talk about Kirk at the end of the video. However, he was never going to get the job fully done for a team like Minnesota. Going out there getting a Drake May by trading up would make a ton of sense for not only the Minnesota Vikings, but even for a team like the New England Patriots. And hypothetically, even if they can't trade up with the Patriots, you could potentially trade up to a team like the LA Chargers at pick 4 and then end up taking a JJ McCarthy or a Bo Nix or whoever at pick 4. I think based off how everything is reading through the draft thus far, I think the top 3 picks will be quarterbacks. So if you can't get in the top 3, you're probably going to go to number 4 and just take probably JJ McCarthy more than likely. And for everyone who hates JJ McCarthy, I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the world. I actually think he'd be a pretty solid fit with the Minnesota Vikings. So take that as you will. Next up at number 5, we have the Denver Broncos, a team that just got rid of their supposed to be long-term quarterback in Russell Wilson. Now it seems like this team is either going to be sticking with Jarrett Stidham for next year or going to take a quarterback in the first round. Me personally, I really like the fit of either Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy to Denver, which are both very easily 2 options I could definitely see happening for Denver at their respective spot. I don't think Denver's in a situation where they could realistically trade up, not only because they don't have the draft capital, but they just don't have the talent right now to really make a drastic trade forward. So if I was a team like Denver, I'd probably just stand still. I would imagine that one of JJ, Bo Nix, or Michael Penix will be at their spot, and I would probably end up just taking them. However, in the event that there is none of those quarterbacks there, or maybe just one of them who you may not like a Michael Penix, I also wouldn't be too against this team just getting the best player available. If a Brock Bowers is to fall, if a JC Latham is there, whoever, just take the best player available. However, the quarterback position does have to get seriously addressed. Jarrett Stidham is a decent quarterback, and I don't really hate the idea of them just chilling with him for a year and then maybe somehow trading up in the back end of the first round to get a Bo Nix. However, that's not realistic. I don't even think they have a 2nd round pick this year. So for Denver, in my opinion, if they can't get their hands on a quarterback, just take best available. But this team seriously does need to look to address that quarterback room. It's one of the worst in the league, and I also think this Denver team as a whole is also a bad team in general. If a guy like JJ McCarthy was to fall to a Denver team, I don't really like that fit there in terms of what they have on the roster. I like the fit schematically wise and player wise, but in Denver, it's really just Courtland Sutton and a decent offensive line, but the rest of the team is just not that great. I will say that defense is all right, and I do think it is a quality enough defense for a young quarterback to be decent with. However, the last team on this list before we start talking about some of the moves of the offseason is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, they did make an acquisition in Gardner Minshew. However, he's not going to be the starting quarterback long-term for this team. Granted, maybe he could come out next year and just play fantastic, but I think we've seen enough of Gardner Minshew to know that he's not a franchise quarterback, but he's a very decent 1-year rental, 2-year starter or mentor guy like he was last year for Anthony Richardson. Las Vegas is in a bit of a unique spot where they have, I believe, a top 12 or top 13 pick, but they're going to be likely outside of the range of getting the top 4 quarterbacks. Again, I imagine that there's going to be 4 quarterbacks, even 5 quarterbacks taken above them. So this could be a situation where Las Vegas does potentially just wait till next year to get a quarterback. However, with Antonio Pierce being the new head coach long term, he probably wants to get his young quarterback of the future to build around. I would imagine he probably does not want to do what the Indianapolis Colts failed to do for so long. The Colts obviously went from guys like Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz, and year in and year out, the same results happened. I don't think the Raiders want to fall in line with that. However, I'm not opposed to the idea of giving Gardner Minshew a year to prove himself and his worth to this team, and then potentially if it doesn't work out long term there, you get a quarterback next year. With that being said, there's not a ton of quarterbacks that I know off the top of my head that next year are just going to blow college football wide open and turn those guys into top 5 picks. Like, yes, Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, some of those guys are very interesting, but as it sits right now, none of those guys really entice me more than like a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix, maybe a Quinn Ewers a tad bit. So if I am Las Vegas, if one of those quarterbacks like a Bo Nix, Michael Penix, or JJ McCarthy is there at my spot, I would seriously consider it because they actually have a relatively decent roster. Yes, they could use a tackle and maybe a true cornerback one, but that team in general is pretty dang solid overall, so I would imagine that the Raiders could be interested in a quarterback. However, we'll just have to wait to see once the draft comes around. But as I promised earlier, let's actually talk about some of the picks or some of the recent free agent pickups that just happened. We're going to kind of rapid fire these so I don't take up too much of your time. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields both going to Pittsburgh. I like both the moves. Russell Wilson will be the starter next year and Justin Fields will be the long-term guy. Hopefully he can learn a thing or two from Russell Wilson and that thing can learn or can work out long-term. Going from Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I think that's a pretty good offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Atlanta getting Kirk Cousins instantly turns the Atlanta Falcons into true contenders. I really freaking like that move. As I mentioned, Gardner Minshew and Sam Darnold are both on respective new teams. I like both those moves. I think they make a ton of sense. Kenny Pickett going to the Philadelphia Eagles and Mac Jones going to the Jacksonville Jaguars is sad to see. However, they will prove to be very good backups in the league. And that is it for all the quarterback moves. I'm sorry if I may have missed one out there. If I did, let me know in the comment section below and I'll make sure to make some noise there. However, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.